Can you imagine if the bad boys was beating the hell out of him? Bill, can you imagine that? As much as I love Steph Curry, if you think that he could take those blows that John Sally, Dennis Rodman, Bill Laimbeer, those body checks that they were putting on Michael and Scotty and myself and guys like that, you really think Steph Curry wouldn't break?
What up, what up, what up? It's your boy, back again. Marlo knows basketball and Marlo knows boxing. Back at y'all with another one. Man, Charles Barkley is sparking a huge debate right now, man. He's saying that Stephen Curry, he's basically saying that Stephen Curry could not survive the 80s. He's basically saying that Stephen Curry would break under the type of pressure and the type of defense, the type of physicality that the 80s would present. Everybody knows the most physical and aggressive team as far as physicality goes is the bad boy Pistons. That's the measuring stick when it comes to physicality in the basketball world. These guys were monsters, man. They were monsters. These guys did not give up easy buckets at all. They were the exact opposite of what you see in basketball today. They were the exact opposite. And they were allowed to do it freely. Guys, you got to keep in mind, the flagrant foul was not introduced until 1991. The 1990-1991 season is when the flagrant foul was introduced. So back then, when the Detroit Pistons, when the bad boy Pistons was doing their thing, what Charles Barkley is talking about, there was no flagrant foul. Everything was a common foul, no matter how hard the foul was, no matter how intentional it was, no matter if they attacked the head, whatever they did, they could literally just do whatever they wanted to you, and it was a common foul. So that's what he's talking about. The Detroit Pistons could literally try to hurt you, and there was nothing that you could do about it but take your 2 free throws, and that's it. So that's a whole different ball game. That's a whole different ball game that you're playing against than the era that Stephen Curry's playing in right now. Don't take this as me underestimating Stephen Curry's greatness. We know how great Stephen Curry is, the greatest 3-point shooter ever in the history of basketball. The greatest 3-point shooter ever to pick up a basketball is obviously Steph Curry. So you know what I'm saying? We're not underestimating that by any measure. We all know that Stephen Curry is not only the best when it comes to his range, but he's also the best when it comes to efficiency. Stephen Curry is the most accurate shooter. He's got the deepest range. He changed the whole game of basketball. We definitely can't underestimate that. This guy crosses half court, he's in range. So that's a given. But when you look at what defenses were allowed to do in the 80s versus what they're allowed to do now, it's totally different. See, this is a flagrant foul. This is a flagrant foul. This is a flagrant foul. The stuff that the Pistons were doing were common fouls, and they were way worse than this. Nowadays, you have to give the shooter space to land, or it's a flagrant foul. Stephen Curry doesn't have to worry about people sliding their feet up under him. He doesn't have to worry about that when he shoots. That's not a concern of his because he knows that it's going to get called a flagrant foul. See, you can go back, not even all the way back to the 80s. You could go back 20 years ago, and that as a flagrant foul now with not getting the shooter space to land, it wasn't even a common foul. 20 years ago, that wasn't even a regular foul. When Jalen Rose slid his foot up under Kobe and hurt him in the 2000 finals, that wasn't even a regular foul.
I did not want you to get injured, but I did want you to get hurt.
So I think that's a lot of what Charles Barkley was talking about. We saw things like what happened to Kobe in the 2000 finals, and that wasn't a foul at all. Like, Stephen Curry doesn't have to worry about somebody sliding their foot up under him to make him twist his ankle. And we all know that Stephen Curry has had terrible problems with his ankles. And definitely early in his career, he missed a lot of time. He missed half a seasons because of his problems with his ankles. Those would have been 10 times worse in the 80s. Those would have been 10 times worse in the 80s because it was legal. It was legal. You could slide your foot up under somebody. If you land on their foot and you mess up your ankle, that's on you. So you had to be mindful of that when you shoot. And of course, Stephen Curry, one of the most efficient players of all time, his accuracy and his efficiency is also what makes him as great a player as he is. That efficiency in the 80s would go down. It would go way down. You got to worry about people sliding their foot up under you and making you mess up your ankle when you have ankle problems. That would have been a nightmare for Stephen Curry. That would have been a nightmare for him. And he would have had to find a way to adjust to it and play with it because it was within the rules back then. And not only was it within the rules in the 80s, it was within the rules 20 years ago. We just saw what Jalen Rose did to Kobe Bryant, and he did it on purpose, admittedly. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to slide his foot up under that man and make him hurt his ankle because he was hitting jump shots on him. If people were doing that to Kobe, Stephen Curry is a better jump shooter than Kobe was. If they're sliding their foot up under people like Kobe, what would they do to somebody like Stephen Curry? As soon as he hits one of those deep threes in their face, that's the next thing that they gonna do. It was completely legal. They gonna slide that foot up under him and try to make him turn his ankle. So that's gonna change the way he's shooting. So now he's got to worry about how he lands. That's gonna affect his shot. He's not gonna be as efficient. And that's what Charles Barkley was talking about when he said that it would be more difficult for Stephen Curry. He might break under that type of pressure. He has bad ankles, and you're allowed to foul him in ways that you're not allowed to foul him now. Not only is when he goes to the hole, which Stephen Curry is a very underrated finisher at the cup. When he goes to the hole, he's going to get fouled hard. When he's out on the perimeter, you could slide your foot up under him and make a guy with ankle problems have to worry about how he's going to land. Larry Bird said it best when he was talking about Bill Laimbeer. He basically spelled out how that was legal, and the reason why he hated Bill Laimbeer was because Bill Laimbeer invoked that type of tactic, but it was legal. So how can you blame him?
No, yeah, and it's because he was a dirty player. Right. He had to do what he had to do. I understand that, but you take like Ricky Mahorn. He'd hit you and all that, but he'd hit you. You know you're gonna get hit. Yeah, he didn't try to maim you. Right. He'll try to hurt you. Right. And he was one of them guys. You shoot a jumper, he tries to slide his foot underneath your ankle so you twist your ankle, and that's why Parrish. Did you really see that? If you watch any of our old games, Parrish was always twisting his ankle against the Pistons. So one time I shot a jumper and Laimbeer did it to me, and I stepped on his foot, but I stepped on a high and twist my ankle. I don't know, a quarter or two later, he was shooting that jumper. I slid mine on there. That's the last time he ever did it. Really? Yeah. But he was, he had to play the way he had to play, and we all understood that. But if you carry it too far, you carry it over the line, you got to protect yourself.
You see, this is what Sir Charles was talking about. This is what Sir Charles was talking about. It was legal to be a dirty player back then. Back then, you could play how you wanted to play. Stephen Curry had ankle problems, and it was legal to do what Bill Laimbeer was doing. It was legal to do what the Detroit Pistons were doing, sliding their foot up under people to make them turn it. Stephen Curry would have had a problem because he has problems with his ankle, and it was legal to do that. And it wouldn't be nothing. You can't complain to the refs. You can't complain to the refs because it's legal. The calls that Curry complains about now, you have no right to complain about it. You have no right to complain about it in the 80s. That's normal. That's normal. Play on. The referee's just going to look at you like you're crazy. Play on. And the biggest thing that I see as far as nowadays and how easy it is to score, how easy it is to be and score efficiently, how easy it is to score and be efficient while you're doing it. Look at the number of players that are over 20 points a game. Look at the number of players that are scoring over 20 points a game. This is ridiculous. You can't play defense anymore. This is why this is happening. So Stephen Curry is, and it's not just Stephen Curry. It's this whole era is benefiting from it. The whole era is benefiting from it. There's 58 players in the National Basketball Association that are averaging 20 points per game or better. 58 players. You could go back 20 years, going back to the 2001 or 2001 season, and you could take a look at how many players were averaging over 20 points a game. There were 25 players averaging 20 points a game or better in 2001. That's 22 years ago. There were only 25 players averaging 20 points per game or better. And that's what is that? So now there's more than twice as many players averaging 20 points a game or better in the NBA. And that's because of lack of defense. They changed the rules. The NBA changed the rules because they know, just like the NFL changed the rules to make it easier for teams to score points. Just like in the NFL, you can't hit a defenseless receiver anymore. You can barely touch the quarterback unless he's out of the pocket. And they did the same thing in the NBA. The same exact thing they're promoting scoring because they feel like scoring is going to equal more dollar signs. I guess they feel like only the hardcore fans care about defense. So they limited the amount of defense that you can play. And when you go back to the 80s, it's even worse. In 1988, in the 1988 season, what is this? Is this the 1988-89 season? The last season of the 1980s, there were only 19 players that averaged 20 points or better. Only 19. Now, this most recent season, 2022-2023, there's 58. 58 players. So, would Stephen Curry break in the 80s? No, I don't think he would break. But he would not be as good as he is. He would not be as efficient as he is, and he wouldn't score as many points as he does. In the 80s, you had to be willing to deal with this on a nightly basis. On a nightly basis, this is what happens. You go to the hole, it ain't no free layups. It ain't no free layups. You might catch them slipping. If somebody's down there, and most of the time the paint is filled with people, there was way less spacing because three-point shooting wasn't promoted as much. And that's a credit to Stephen Curry for changing the game. But there was way less spacing. So you go to the hole, you're going to get clobbered. And it's not a flagrant foul. There was no flagrant foul in the 80s. That's what Charles Barkley is talking about. There was no flagrant foul in the 80s. These were common fouls. You go to the line, shoot your free throws, and move on. And that's it. No easy buckets. No easy buckets. And that's just the way it was, man. And Stephen Curry would have to adjust to that. Do I feel like he would be able to adjust? Yes. I feel like he would be able to adjust. A lot of people try to make it seem like he's this small, frail guy. He's not, man. He's 6'2", over 200 pounds, man. Stephen Curry would be able to get in the weight room, and he would be able to put his body in a position to take these type of beatings. But he would not be as efficient. That's what I'm saying. He would not be as efficient, and he wouldn't score as many points. He wouldn't have the scoring titles that he has. Definitely. He would not be a guy that's averaging over 30 points a game. He wouldn't. There was too many options to try to stop him. If all those fails, you get physical. And that's what they would have did. And the most glaring example as to why players wouldn't be as efficient and wouldn't score as many points as they do today, 20 years ago, let alone in the 80s, is guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like he's a good player. You know, he's a nice young player. He's nice. But he's not even a top 10 player in the league. And he's averaging over 30 points a game. He averaged over 30 points a game on better than 50% shooting from the field. So he has over 50% field goal shooting percentage and averaged over 30 points a game this past season. That's not happening in the year 2000. That's not happening in the year 2006, 2010. That's not happening. Damn sure ain't happening in the 90s and the 80s. But guys like this are able to put up over 30 points a game on better than 50% field goal shooting percentage. That's ridiculous. He's not a top 10 player in the league and he's doing this. So at the end of the day, the question is, was Charles Barkley right? Was he correct in saying that Stephen Curry would break in the 80s? Nah, I don't think he's 100% correct in that. I don't think Stephen Curry would break. He just wouldn't be as great of a player as he is now. He's benefiting just like a lot of other players, especially LeBron James. At 38 years old, still a top 10 player in the league, which wouldn't happen in any other era, I don't think. But this era is soft, so he's able to do it. Stephen Curry, just like LeBron James, is benefiting from the era that he's playing in, which is a soft era where the league promotes offense and they limit what you can do defensively. There's no hand checking. You got to get a shooter space to land. Everything is a flagrant foul. Everything has to be, and if it's not a flagrant foul, everything has to be reviewed for a flagrant foul. They got to take 3 minutes and replay it 20 times to see if it was a flagrant foul. It's too nitpicky. So guys can't play defense like they used to be able to. The way Stephen Curry got razor's edged, for all my WWE fans, WWF fans from the past, like Razor Ramon used to do, for that one time that he took probably the hardest foul of his career, that would have been on a nightly basis. He got razor's edged by Trevor Ariza, and that was the hardest foul he's ever taken. A razor's edge. Guys like Jordan, Barkley, Larry Bird, the stars of the 80s, they were taking razor's edges every night. Every single night. And shout out to the late, great Scott Hall, man. Razor Ramon. Because the players nowadays will never understand. They was taking the razor's edge every single night. Nowadays, if a player takes the razor's edge, it's a fine, it's a suspension, it's a flagrant foul, the guy gets ejected, all that. In the 80s, it was a regular foul. A regular foul. And that just, it is what it is, man. Shout out to Cam and Mace. It is what it is. Was Charles Barkley 100% correct? No. I don't think he was 100% correct. I don't think Stephen Curry would literally break. But Charles Barkley may actually be correct if they slide their foot up under him while he's shooting them jump shots and he breaks his ankle. Because they might have ended his career. So the more I think about it, Charles Barkley might be correct. Stephen Curry had major ankle problems. If it's legal to slide your foot up under somebody when they're shooting jump shots, and that's primarily what Stephen Curry does, 90% of his field goal attempts are jump shots, then yeah, I mean, if that ankle breaks to a point where it's beyond repair, he might have been broken. So shout out to Sir Charles, man. He might have been right on this one.